Hey there, Sam Visnic here, Release Muscle Therapy. In this video, I'm going to show you how to correctly mobilize your spine with a foam roll, so stay tuned. Okay, we're going to start off with the first rolling technique. This is a very broad general application of the roll. Works really well when we have very specific areas that have a lot of tenderness and it's hard to just start laying right over them. Sometimes just general rolling can help loosen it up, especially if you have had a day where you're sitting a lot and you're stiff and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by laying on the roll. Always the best place to start, in my opinion, is just below the shoulder blades. This is the area that feels the most comfortable. If we lay too far down on the roll, down into the lower back, it's pretty sensitive, hard to get going in that area. If we're too high up with the roller too high between the shoulder blades, we don't have a lot of leverage to lay over it. It feels like it's going to flip out from underneath us. This is the best place to start. You're going to take your hands, place them behind your head. Because we're doing a lot of anti-gravity activity here, these neck muscles can get tired real quick. So we put our hands behind our head just like this so we can support our head weight. Now, when we're rolling this area, okay, what we want to do in these broad strokes is to lift our hips up just a little bit. So we're kind of hovering off of the ground. Weight is going to be quadriceps and glutes. And what we're just going to do is to start kind of making big, broad strokes here, rolling up and down the spine. Again, sensing for sensitive areas that we're going to come back to, but also just not spending too much time on any one area. And we can adjust how much comfort we have here by how much we flex or extend. If you're going to extend over the roll and do this, that's far more intense than if you stay into flexion in your roll. And for a lot of people just starting off with this technique, this is a good way to go to just desensitize these areas of the spine to the roller. Now, we don't want to go too far down. Usually my recommendation is the bottom portion of the ribs. We don't really roll on the lumbar spine. There are different techniques that work much better for that. As we start to get down there toward that lower thoracic spine, tends to be quite sensitive. You'll start to feel your abs quivering a little bit as they're trying to guard. That's a good point to know when to stop and then work your way back up again. So again, we can do very long glides if you want to, or you can do little short 2 to 3 inch glides as well. We start to work up the spine a little bit more. Now we don't want to flex and stay low because that roll is going to shoot out from underneath us. So we can lift up the hips a little bit more, and that way we can roll on that upper portion at the highest point between the shoulder blades. Again, 3 to 4 inch ranges of motion, just rolling back and forth, finding those sensitive areas that we're going to work on in the next technique. Okay, on this technique, we're going to be specifically focusing on individual sections of the spine, where I'm going to show you what we're essentially looking to do. When we lay over the top of the roll, we're going to be making contact with a group of segments. Now, this is going to depend on the roll, but of course this roll is the standard 6-inch roll, so it has a certain width to it, right? So you could see that we're not making contact with like 1 or 2 vertebrae, but yet a group, probably about 3 to 4 vertebrae at a time. So this is generally the area where we're going to start rolling, which is at the mid to lower portion of the shoulder blades. It's hard to roll anything higher than that because we don't have enough weight and leverage to actually get a lot done. I'm going to show you different techniques on how to address that area. But when we do this, we have to make sure that we understand hands go behind the head and we're tipping back and forth, just basically teeter-tottering off of that group of vertebrae. And that is going to be mobilizing them into extension. Now, because of the way that the spine works, how we tend to extend in a group of vertebrae, we want to make sure that we're not just arching all the way from the most flexible parts of our spine. A lot of people are very, very flexible. They tip their upper body back, their lower back goes into a huge arch, and that reduces the intent or focus into that one area that we're trying to work. One of my recommendations to resolve this is to take the pelvis and to perform what we call a posterior pelvic tilt. That's where you're tucking your tail, you're flattening your lower back. When you do that, it introduces some flexion into the lower back and locks it still while we're extending the upper back, okay? Rather than everything just kind of extending straight back over the roll, we lock that lower lumbar spine, and then it helps us get a little bit more directed force into the area that we're trying to mobilize up here, okay? So what we're going to do is a number of repetitions on that area. So we grab our roll, starting from that same place as usual. which is just below the shoulder blades, ideal space to work up toward. You might be able to get a little bit higher, but that's usually about it. Place your hands behind your head. There's this posterior pelvic tilt. I kind of roll or tuck my pelvis underneath me. And I'm going to bring my elbows in because I want my shoulder blades out of the way so my spine is making contact with the roll. And then I'm just going to dip straight back. Okay? Usually not too tender in this area. Some people it is. Okay? And then I'm going to come back up again. And notice how I'm not letting the roll around. I'm just extending back, maintaining that pelvic tilt in the lower portion there, and then back up again. Now, usually 3 to 5 repetitions is going to get the job done on each area, but you can certainly do more, and it depends upon how sensitive it is. The more sensitive you are in this area, the less repetitions. The less sensitive you are, you tolerate more. So, to get to the next section, all I'm going to do is just scoot by pushing with my legs, maybe 2 inches, and that way we can get to the next segments, although we're still influencing the segments that we just moved because of how much surface area we have to cover over the roll. So I'm going to do that same procedure, just getting down there, holding and relaxing for a couple seconds, coming back up again, basically doing an abdominal crunch, and then dipping back again. Okay, we're going to repeat this procedure, scooting down, and the more farther down we get here, the more sensitive things tend to be. And we're going to lose some range of motion here because of that sensitivity, and we don't have that extension capability that we have in other areas. Okay, so here, as I'm rolling on it, just even positioning, it's starting to get pretty sensitive. So from here, I'm not going to just force through that. I'm going to do small repetitions, small ranges of motion. I can already feel my abs starting to quiver just a little bit. Just a little bit of motion. Try to control it with my abdominals. And that is about it. I might be able to get one more round. Let's go ahead and try it. I'm going to scoot down a little bit more. Ooh, even just rolling on it right there, it's pretty sensitive. So I could just kind of hang out there, do a little kind of baby crunch, and that's about as far as I'm going to get. When I'm done with this, I don't want to fire back up into flexion. The best way to get up is to just kind of roll to your side and then get upright. And that's how we're going to do a specific extension mobilization using the foam roll. Okay, now let's talk about that upper thoracic area, which was hard to access with that foam roll going this direction, which is perpendicular to the body. Now the issue is that it's very challenging to get good leverage in the upper thoracic area, and I'm going to show you a little trick that I found in order to access this. The primary issue that we have here, okay, we're going to lay on the foam roll in a long ways direction, and we're going to be able to position some of these vertebrae over the edge of the roll. Okay? Now this looks a lot easier than it is because there's a few tweaks to this. But wherever we position that roll, imagine that as stopping that vertebrae from moving so that the vertebrae that are above it can move more into this direction. So we're kind of going like this, right? The challenge with that is that the neck is going to want to extend. So it takes a good amount of effort to try to keep the neck steady, the body positioned on the roll, and getting this area mobilized, okay? So we have smaller amounts of movements here as we're doing it, but we should be able to impact about these 3 upper thoracic vertebrae. So I'm going to show you how we do this. Now to do this, we're going to use our roll. I also recommend having something that what I call a lift here, because as we bring our head back, a lot of times that we're obviously going to see here with me, and I'm tall, I'm 6'3", getting my head down to the ground is like a big reach down there. And if you want to be able to settle and hold on to a position, it's kind of hard to hold your head in that position. It's easier to use something like this. I'll show you how I do that. But what we're going to do is going to sit all the way on the edge of the roll. Okay? And for me, I'm tall, so I got to go all the way to the bottom and then lay all the way back. Now from here, my head is slightly tipping backward. Okay? That means to me that my vertebrae is basically or my skull is right over the edge. That's with my positioning. I'm going to scoot until I get that section of that upper thoracic spine to the edge of the roll. It's kind of hard to tell, but if you stick your hand back there, you'll feel the top of the shoulder blades. That's about where we want to do this. We never want to do this on the neck, obviously. Okay? So from here, I'm going to place my hands behind my head. Here's what we need to do. we need to tuck the chin that elongates the neck, and we want to retract it. And that retraction motion is what pushes those vertebrae backward. And we want that to happen so that they're going over the roll, okay? So I'm going to position myself a little better right here. I'm going to take the back of my head, I'm going to tuck my chin, and I'm going to retract everything to the floor. Now notice how I didn't tip my head back into extension. I'm actually retracting it like this, and I can feel that pressure up there on the roll as the vertebrae are kind of tipping over the edge. I can feel that extension force in there, okay? So it kind of looks like this retraction effort going back over the roll. Yes, my rib cage is popping up a bit, but it's pretty hard to get the right forces in there without doing this. So we do compromise the perfect alignment here in the lower vertebrae for what we're doing here in the upper. So I'm going to continue doing that mobilization there, just tipping back and getting that pressure over the roll. Now where this comes in is if I want to use that as a guide so that I retract, and then I can use my fingertips just to position myself, and I can hold that if I want to do some holds. And that way it's hard, like my head isn't floating in midair, it's actually resting back against this. I have somewhere to go, okay? Now, when I get to the next one, I'm going to scoot just a tad bit. Yes, this one's a lot of work. And then retract back again, okay? And again, a little bit of effort there, and I'll feel that extension going right up into the upper thoracic area, okay? And again, because it's so much work, probably going to do less repetitions, probably anywhere from 5 to 8 to get the job done, and then we're done. Difficult to get up off of the roll this way. We're just going to scoot right over off the side, okay? So that is how we get to those upper thoracic vertebrae. Takes a little bit of time to play with that to get it right, but you will feel the roller putting pressure up there at the top of the upper thoracic area, which will provide a nice extension mobilization. Okay, there are better tools for sure for mobilizing the lower lumbar spine, but you can use a foam roll, and that's what this video is about. So I am going to show you how you can accomplish this. Now, as I mentioned previously, we want to make sure that we're not actually rolling on the lumbar spine with our weight. In particular, what I was referring to is the upper body over the roll. There's too much force that's going through the lumbar spine. However, there's another way to do this. If we lower our hips down on top of the roll, we can control the amount of force going through the lumbar spine, and it's going to feel better. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay on the ground, okay, and then what we're going to do is to slide the roller underneath the lower back, okay, so it's situated above the belt line. Now from there, I'm not going to get a whole lot of work done, so if I let my hips rest on that, I feel a little bit of pressure there, but not a lot happening, right? So I'll lift up and I'm going to go a little bit higher. Now that's about as far as I'm going to go there, okay? Now from this position, all I do is open my feet out and I just let my pelvis dip down. And that is going to get a little bit of extension in the lumbar spine, but it's not a lot of weight because my feet are on the ground and only my lumbar spine is making contact. Now, just for those of you out here, make sure you always talk to your physician or your chiropractor or your physical therapist before doing extension work in the lumbar spine. It may not be good for you, so be mindful of that. So as I kind of let that down, I never fully just hang and let go. I'm always maintaining some activity in my leg muscles as I'm coming back up again. Now, this movement is predominantly controlled by pelvic tilt. So as I let my pelvis drop down, that's an anterior pelvic tilt. And then I roll my pelvis back up again, posterior pelvic tilt. So I'm working on, just again, that light extension force just by doing this pelvic tilting activity over the top of the roll. Not too sensitive, and that's the good thing because this is not a lot of force, okay? And that's the point. It's supposed to be very low, okay? And that way we can kind of get that rolling activity and help mobilize that mid to upper lumbar, lower thoracic area. It feels pretty good, okay? And I might do somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 reps just because this area is such a short range of motion and I'm mostly controlling it really well with low intensity, okay? So that's how we can do a light mobilization for the lower
thoracic upper lumbar area with our foam roll.